What is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, for listening, however you are consuming this podcast. If you are watching on the video side, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button and click that little bell so that you can get notifications for when new videos drop and when we go live, which we are right now on the video side, sometimes, often, actually unannounced. So make sure you guys do that. Big shout out to our sponsor for the show, as always, the law office of William Mattar. Hurt in a car, call William Mattar, 444-4444. Call William Mattar today to get the compensation that you deserve. All right, so Buffalo Bills media, the content bros, as Joe from Queens unaffectionately likes to call them, they're busy working on their own stuff right now. An eventful Thursday at One Bills Drive with the Joe Brady introductory press conference. And I'll tell you, all my tweener content creator people, like people who cover or are at least knowledgeable about the Bills and the Sabres, my hybrid guys, people like Chris Ostrander and Steve Bermel, my man PK from the Buffalo Sports Collective. All those guys are locked in here Thursday night as we're streaming this live, recording this for the Friday podcast. Anyway, the Sabres are playing right now, so all of them are locked into this game, completely unavailable. I don't blame them literally whatsoever. This team is on fire. And as I'm starting this podcast, by the way, the Sabres are up 3-1 after 2 against the Los Angeles Kings. But anyway, looks like I'm riding solo tonight. Joe from Queens is in Cancun. All good, man. All good. Got a lot of shit that I want to discuss on this show anyway. And you know that I ain't gonna lie, I love hearing myself talk as it is. People who are watching this on the live side, the comments surely are starting to already, and they will filter in as they always do. I'm going to try my best to get to at least a few of them, and I'll certainly scan through at the end, and maybe we'll get to the a couple at the end of the show as well. But I do need to say this. I'm not going to be able to put them up on the screen as often, if at all, like I usually am, because typically I got to guess whether it's Joe from Queens or someone else when I'm live. And when they're talking, that's really when I get a chance to kind of see what you guys are saying and throw some stuff up there. So I really won't be able to do that on the solo tip here today, but I'll try my best. Anyway, people, you can talk amongst yourselves, as always. People can see them live. People can see them on demand when they watch this video, whenever they do. So by all means, make sure you comment and have your voice heard on this show. What's up, Luke and Diamond Pickle? A lot of the regulars here. Ralph Wilson Sr. in the chat. Appreciate you guys, as always. And again, a lot of people, I don't expect the live to be too busy here on a Thursday night, unannounced live show on a Thursday night, because like I said, the Sabres are playing. A lot of people are watching the Sabres game, quite frankly. If I wasn't doing this show, I would be as well. And I got to tell you, it's crazy, man, how much shit has changed with scheduling these shows in the Sabres. It wasn't long ago where if we were going to do a show, like a Sabres game was no thought on when we would do this podcast, but they're playing so damn well right now that people, they want to watch them play. It's become must watch. So again, don't expect it to be too crazy here on a live chat. Anyway, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, if I had any reservations about the Joe Brady hire, and guess what? I absolutely did, for sure. Still do a little bit. But I think I'm feeling a little bit better, maybe a lot better about Joe Brady right now, in this moment, tonight, today, as we're talking, recording this, and you're listening to this. I want to talk about a few of the memorable highlights and quotes from his press conference on Thursday. I thought it was, all in all, very good. And then I kind of want to shift to what I liked about it. Maybe we'll get into a couple things that I didn't like about it. Not maybe, we will. And then I'm going to get into how I feel about Joe Brady as a new head coach after having some time to kind of digest things a little bit, as opposed to the instant reaction. You know, we had these instant, emotional, fueled reactions to Sean McDermott getting fired. Whether you loved it, whether you hated it, the shock that Brandon Beane didn't go with him, the instant fire, so to speak. And I feel like as the days wore on, people started to settle into a little more logic, a little more reasonable thought process. And I kind of feel like it's becoming that with the Joe Brady thing. A lot of people pissed off when Joe Brady got hired, a very uninspiring hire, which, by the way, I still kind of feel like that, to be completely honest with you. But I feel like as the time goes by, the days go by, and maybe for you, like it has for me, at least to some extent, after this press conference on Thursday, I feel like it's changed. Like my mindset about Joe Brady has changed. And by the way, this will not be a long episode because, again, I'm solo and I don't get to go back and forth with a guest. So this isn't going to be like something crazy, like an hour or anything like that. Highlights of the press conference that I want to make sure I hit on. Like I thought, memorable moments. And again, we'll get into what I liked, what I didn't like, the big picture stuff. We'll get into that. We'll kind of do it one piece at a time. I want to kind of keep things a little bit organized so I don't get lost here. It was so Joe Brady comes out, and it was a very emotional, and you could tell nervous too, Joe Brady during his opening comments, his speech. My first thought was, this guy, you know, just as emotional as he was, and the family and all that stuff, I was almost like, well, where's his gold jacket? Like, is this a Canon Hall of Fame speech? Like, that was my in-the-moment reaction. But look, it's the biggest day of Joe Brady's entire career, by far. Nothing professionally has even come close to this. This is probably a top 5 moment in his entire life. It's monumental for him. So I'm not going to sit there and criticize a man for being emotional, being nearly in tears, kind of having a hard time getting some of the words out that he wanted to. The moment was very big for him, and it's something I'm sure, you know, he thought of his family during those comments. You could see it. Staring at his wife at times. I'm sure he thought about a lot of the struggles that have come his way, professionally, personally, adversity that you have to overcome to get to this, a job where there's only 32 of them on this freaking earth. It's quite the accomplishment. So I kind of like the fact that he allowed himself to be raw, to be real in those moments. It made me happy for him. And it's hard to blame him, like I said, at all for being nervous. I wouldn't read too much into that. I know there was a couple creeps on Twitter that I was, you know, kind of doom scrolling a little bit during the press conference, and they're like, well, how can he be a leader? Is he going to choke during the games? He's choking during his press conference. First of all, he didn't choke during the press conference. Again, he was just being raw and real with people in that moment. He'll get more comfortable. He'll get more relaxed talking to the media. That's one thing I am not whatsoever worried about. There was a piece of news that kind of, well, sort of news anyway, that kind of came from this press conference. Joe Brady confirmed what was already being reported. Joe Brady will continue calling the plays for the Buffalo Bills. And I know a lot of you feel some kind of way about that. We'll get into that a little bit more later on here on this podcast. But Joe Brady will be calling plays for the Buffalo Bills again this year going forward. He also said, and I really like this, because I believed him. Maybe if I didn't believe him, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, whatever. But he said that he couldn't sleep for the last week. This is the job I wanted. That's his direct quote. I don't know about you guys. I completely believed him there. You could tell. And he interviewed for other jobs. I know he interviewed for the Ravens job. I think he interviewed for the Raiders job, maybe the Cardinals. I'm not sure. I feel like he interviewed for 3 other jobs. I know 2 for sure. But this is a job he wanted. And when he said that, I believed him. I didn't think he was bullshitting us at all. So that was part of a highlight for me anyway during this. When he was asked about, and I found this pretty interesting too. He was asked about his philosophy on how he's going to build out his coaching staff. And he said, and this is a direct quote from the press conference, Joe said, if we have a bunch of Joe Bradys in the room, we're not going to grow and evolve. I'm not in the business of hiring my friends. I mean, take that for what it's worth. That's, I don't want a bunch of guys who think like me. We heard the word between Joe and between Brandon Beane a lot throughout this day, like 4 or 5 times at least I counted, alignment. Like they're in alignment. But alignment doesn't always mean agreeing, and they made it a point to talk about that as well. I think Joe Brady wants some guys, especially on the defensive side, which they got a long way to go right now with the defensive side of the ball when it comes to coaches and personnel. But I don't necessarily think he wants to agree with philosophy on all of them. So I found that pretty telling. He doesn't want to hire a bunch of people who think like him. He doesn't want to hire a bunch of people who are going to agree with everything that he says. Because like he says, you're not going to grow and you're not going to be able to evolve when you do things that way. So I thought that was interesting. At one point, Joe Brady was asked what he wants to change about this team. Like, I can't remember who the reporter was, but it's like, what do you want to change? What do you want to change about this team? What do you want to change about this offense? And Joe Brady said, quote, sometimes it's just fine-tuning things. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here. If Joe from Queens was on this show, by the way, he would be disgusted with me right now. Pandering Pat, I'm ball-washing Joe Brady left and right. Sure. I'll say this, though. When he says sometimes it's just fine-tuning things, I'm not so sure about that. Not so sure that I agree that they're just going to fine-tune things. If that was the case, Bobby Babich would still be here. He's gone. So they're definitely going to have a new defensive coordinator. They're probably going to have across the board. Adai went to the really good positional coach. He went to Miami. So major changes coming on the defensive side. They're going to have, at least on the defensive side, pretty much an overhaul. A new staff. They're going to have a new special teams coach because Tabor's gone. They already hired an offensive line coach. In fact, today, Thursday afternoon, Pat Mayer from Pittsburgh later in the day, who worked under at one time Aaron Kromer, by the way, wanted to point that out years ago. So I'm not going to evaluate that hire today. That's not what this podcast, this episode is all about. But my point is, there's going to be a lot of changes, especially on the defensive side of the football. And the salary cap and the talent or lack thereof talent at some spots, especially on that defense, I kind of feel like that's going to dictate a lot of personnel turnover coming up. Like I said, just from the coaching staff, but also from the players themselves. I think there's going to be a solid handful of starters on this football team from last year who you won't see again in 2026. Just spitballing right here off the top of my head. I think Joey Bosa is definitely going to be gone. I don't think A.J. Epinesa would be back. DaQuan Jones, free agent. He's probably gone. You got Ed Oliver. You got Sanders. You got Deion Walker. You draft 2 defensive tackles in the first 4 rounds so that you don't have to keep bringing guys back like DaQuan Jones. So those guys could be gone. Shaq Thompson, Matt Milano, both of them are free agents. They could lose one or both of them to free agency if the Bills even want either of those guys back. Terrell Bernard, we saw what happened last year, man. He hurt a lot. Questionable. Taylor Rapp, big-time cut candidate. Trey White played great, but Trey White might not be back because you got Bedford on one side and you got a first-round Guy will be going in the year 2, Max Harrison on the other end. Do you give Trey White, who, by the way, played himself into a nice payday somewhere? Somebody's going to give Trey White a nice little bag, and he's going to absolutely deserve it based on his play this year. So, A, is he willing to come back to Buffalo? I know he loves the city. I know he loves his team. I know how much he feels about this organization. He truly loves it, but he probably wants to play. He certainly should want to get paid. And if you got Harrison and you got Benford, is Trey White going to take a contract where he doesn't even know if he's going to be the starter on this team? Is he going to take a very moderate contract because he doesn't even know he's going to be the starter on this team? And if you're Joe Brady, do you want a third corner who plays 0 special teams? So if Harrison and Benford are starting, Trey White, he's not going to play special teams. He never has. You can't have your backup corner not play any special teams. So we don't know if Trey White's going to be back. Jordan Poyer, 34 years old, I highly imagine that he's done. He was great this year. He really helped the team. But again, he's 34 years old. Probably gone. Taylor Rapp, probably cut. DeMar Hamlin, no impact this year. I believe he only signed a 1-year deal anyway. He's probably not back. So there's going to be a lot of turnover on this defense. So to say that they're just going to fine-tune some things, that's certainly something that I don't buy at all. Before we get into a break, so that's like kind of like the highlights of what was said today. And then again, there's some things from today that I really like. A couple things, actually only 2 that I didn't. And then I want to get into kind of just my overall feelings following this press conference. And one incredibly important detail that is still yet to come from all this. In terms of what I loved most about this press conference on Thursday. First of all, maybe it's not the most important thing. I just thought it was the right thing. I love the fact that Joe Brady took time out to not just acknowledge Sean McDermott. I mean, he easily could have acknowledged him and just quickly moved on and made it about himself and about the present and the future of this football team. But Joe Brady took his time and he gave Sean McDermott the shine and the respect that he really deserved. Direct quote from Joe Brady. I love Coach McDermott. I'm going to do everything I can to continue to build upon the foundation that he laid. He said, I love Coach McDermott. I'm grateful for Coach McDermott. That might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, and I understand that. But I thought it was classy, and I thought it was the right thing to do. You know, Sean McDermott, for his flaws, for his warts, and we're not here to talk about Sean McDermott today. We're not going to get into all that. He's not the coach of this team anymore. Whether you thought it was the right move, whether you thought it was the wrong move, it was the move. But Sean McDermott brought Joe Brady in. Quarterback coach. He fired Ken Dorsey. He elevated Joe Brady to offensive coordinator. And he had a lot of confidence in Joe Brady. I am positive that Joe Brady has picked up a lot of good habits along the way. I'm quite certain that Joe Brady has learned a lot about being a leader of men. And again, Sean McDermott's issue was games, playoff games specifically, tightening up, bad decision. We don't want Joe Brady to learn from that shit, of course. I'm just talking about being a leader of men, having a foundation. A lot of respect shown to Sean McDermott directly from Joe Brady, and I really appreciated that. I did. Also, I loved that he kind of separated himself from what kind of coach and what kind of play caller that he wants to be, saying not just once, not just twice, I think it was at least 3 times that he comes from the Sean Payton tree. Now, I don't think I've ever, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but I don't think I've ever heard Joe Brady say, while he was offensive coordinator and Sean McDermott was the coach, that he comes from the Sean Payton tree. Not in a press conference. You know, he talks to the media on Mondays during the season. I don't recall him ever saying that. Now, I don't think in any way that was no subtle dig or disrespect to Sean McDermott. I think that's just his way of letting the media and letting all the fans know that he plans on doing things a little bit different, that he probably will be more aggressive. Sean Payton coaching tree means being aggressive, taking more shots down the field. Now, Joe Brady was very diplomatic, talking about it, throwing the ball down the field, being smart about it, protecting the ball, saying all the right things. But you get a real sense, and I at least I sensed it anyway, that by continuously saying the Sean Payton coaching tree, that I think this offense is going to look a little more different than maybe what the average person thinks is going to be. I really like that a lot. And I also liked the fact, now some people are going to say, well, it almost sounded like a puppet for the star quarterback. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I love that Joe Brady is smart enough to know where his bread is being buttered. And, of course, that bread is being buttered, is Josh Allen, right? I don't think there's going to be any ego involved there whatsoever between Brady and Josh Allen. Again, I mean, it's impossible. When Sean McDermott's been the coach for as long as he's been, it's impossible not to reference and compare him at times. And I think the relationship between Sean and Josh definitely evolved over the years, especially the last couple of years. But I think maybe a little earlier on during the tenure, Sean was a little maybe egocentric when it comes to Josh Allen. Hey, like, you might be the star quarterback, but guess what, motherfucker? I'm the coach. This is my team. I'm not saying Joe Brady's going to be a pushover like that, but he's more willing to work side by side with Josh instead of boss-employee type relationship. He said this direct quote, "Every decision this organization makes is with Josh Allen in mind. He is the leader of this organization, and the weight he carries on his shoulders, I can't even imagine." Again, with respect to Sean McDermott, I don't see him saying that, at least not publicly, and especially not until the end. So I like that. And then the last thing that I really liked from what I saw today specifically, which doesn't surprise me, but I just loved his energy and his passion. Like, he didn't say it because it would have been boring and cliche to say, but I'll say it. I don't know if he's going to become the next Shanahan. I don't know if he's going to become another LaFleur, another Sean Payton. Who the hell knows? But I'll say this. I feel confident in saying this. I don't think there's a coach around the league that wants this more than Joe Brady. I don't think there's another coach around the league that feels more passion right now, a bigger burning desire to win and be the best and bring a Super Bowl home to their respective city than Joe Brady. And I certainly don't think that there's going to be a coach out there, a head coach, that's going to get up in the morning every day and work harder than Joe Brady. That doesn't automatically translate to success. I'm not naive when it comes to that. I'm just saying, you can see his energy. You can see his passion. And even before today, he's had a good relationship with his offense. Those guys love him. We've heard throughout the season, near the end of the season, where Joe Brady, the speculation started where, he could be brought up in coaching circles. I remember Dawson Knox saying, he's terrible. I hope no one hires him. Josh Allen saying the same things. It might be tongue-in-cheek the way they're saying it, but I think they really believe that. Like, they got the respect of Brady, and they like Brady. And now it's about the defensive side of the ball as well. And Joe Brady had a little bit of fun with that. Not during the press conference. I don't know if you guys caught it, but on the Pat McAfee show, he was kind of doing the rounds after, but he said that he's looking forward because he's not just the offensive coordinator. Now he's a head coach, and he's looking forward to going to training camp. And he said, and he even swore, he goes, I can't wait till the first time for Josh Allen to throw a fucking pick so that he could celebrate with the defense. He can't wait to talk shit to the offensive line. Again, his energy, his passion, I thought it really, really shined through here on Thursday. So that's a bunch of things that I liked. I'm going to take a quick break, come back, get into a few things, at least a couple that I didn't like, and then we'll kind of talk about big picture stuff. So literally, on the video side especially, be back in about 5 seconds. All right, folks, we're back here talking Buffalo, presented by the law office of William Mattar. Heard in a car, call William Mattar, 444-4444. Call William Mattar today to get the compensation that you deserve. I know most people listen to the podcast as opposed to watching it. I know most people who watch it on demand. At some other point, they don't really catch it live. But for everybody, if you're in the live chat and you're watching this live right now as I'm recording this, thank you again. I really appreciate you for being here. I especially appreciate the interactions in the chat box. Like I said, typically I have a guest with me and I can kind of lock in and get a bunch of them on the screen. But doing this solo, it's just really impossible to kind of not lose my train of thought while still being able to keep up with the comments. By all means, though, please keep them coming. Chat amongst yourself. Like I said, they'll appear even on demand, and I'll try to get to a few of them at the very end. Buffalo Sabres, halfway through the third period, are up 3-1, 7:41 left in the game. That should be over by the time we get off the air. Anyway, all right, so I talked about, again, I ball washed Joe Brady pretty much for the entire first half of this show. Joe from Queens in Cancun right now, who I did talk to earlier. He was going to try to get on the show, by the way, via his cell phone from Cancun. I was like, your fucking wife's probably going to kill you, man. Anyway, long story short, late dinner, so he couldn't make it today. And he won't be on the show Sunday either. I'm going to have a guest for our live show Sunday. All right, so anyway, been ball washing, much to his chagrin. But there are a couple things that I didn't love them about this. All right, and the first one, let me preface this. This might just be me talking, but I'm not entirely sure Joe Brady was their first choice. Even after hearing everything I heard today. Now, to a fault, maybe an obsession, I'm constantly trying to read between the lines, and sometimes I'm so wrong when I do that. I kind of feel like I found myself doing that a little bit during this press conference, that they're happy with Joe Brady. They're certainly putting, they're putting everything behind him, the eggs in the basket, Joe Brady right now. But I'm not sure that he was their first choice. Two things. One, Brandon Beane sure did speak awful highly of Philip Rivers. And if you remember, it was Philip Rivers that withdrew from consideration from the head coaching job. It wasn't the Bills telling Philip Rivers that, hey, this job's not yours. You're not ready for this yet. Reportedly, Philip Rivers withdrew because he, was just with his family. It wasn't the right time yet. Beane called him a football savant, which he is, Philip Rivers. And I can't help but wonder if he didn't pull from consideration that in the relationship that he has with Josh Allen, although at least what they're telling you, Josh Allen ain't have shit to do with picking the coach. Josh Allen sat in on the meetings. He had some questions, but Josh Allen, according to Brandon Beane, was not part of the process of narrowing the choices down, and he certainly did not choose who this coach was going to be. But anyway, the relationship between Rivers and Josh Allen, the respect that Brandon Beane has for him, not just as a former quarterback, but as a football guy, makes me wonder that if Philip Rivers stayed in consideration, if they would have pulled that trigger on him and you go and you get yourself an experienced offensive coordinator and an experienced defensive coordinator, if they pulled the trigger on that. Again, that just could be me. That could just be me. And then the other thing which again, the first part, maybe I'm speculating a little too much. The second part, I don't think I am, though, because Brandon Beane said that they didn't want to do interviews with any candidates from the Super Bowl teams, a.k.a. Clint Kubiak, of course. That would have been good, he said, for the franchise based on the timing and the fact that he wanted to build a staff. Although he did say, technically he did go on to say that they would have done it if they didn't feel like they had their guy. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I think I do buy the fact that they didn't want to interview Kubiak because they thought it was too late. They needed to get their staff in place. And you think about it now. Joe Brady's been the coach for a couple days. They hired an offensive line coach already. Then the next 48 to 72 hours, I wouldn't be surprised if they have half their coaches done. Where if they waited to the Super Bowl to be able to even talk, because they couldn't even talk to Kubiak. So you have to wait until the day after the Super Bowl. So now you're talking February 9th. You hire him that day, that night. You bring him out. You roll. Who knows what kind of staff he's going to have and how many assistants go and take other jobs. So I think that was a major concern. I think that scared them off a little bit. Again, I'm not trying to stir up any controversy here, but I wonder if it's Clint Kubiak on the podium today and not Joe Brady if the Rams had beaten the Seattle Seahawks last week in that NFC Championship game. I wish they did because I would love to know. There's going to be, now look, if the Bills have success, they win the Super Bowl, who gives a shit? But right now, I kind of feel like I would have loved to have known if Brady's, the guy and the first guy that they interviewed, and then they interviewed 8 other guys after that, had Kubiak been available, they interviewed Kubiak. I'm skeptical that Joe Brady would have gotten this job. Again, hopefully it doesn't mean anything at all down the road. But right now, it's kind of what I'm thinking. So there's that. And then the other thing I didn't like, and I don't want to overreact on this, and this was more, by the way, if you only watched the press conference live on TV, radio, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you watched it, and you stopped following completely afterwards, Joe Brady came back out to meet with media people, local people. It was a little more like a group setting, and questions were asked, and Joe Brady continued to give some answers. And Keon Coleman was brought up. And I don't want to overreact on the Keon stuff. Joe Brady has to say the right things right now. He should. He's the head coach. That dude caught strays last week from the owner. He got literally thrown under the bus last week by the owner. Joe Brady is not going to do that shit. So I get it. But, man, he went out of his way to talk up Keon Coleman, as did Josh Allen, who held court with the media to a lesser extent a little bit later on after Joe Brady spoke for the first time. Again, I wouldn't expect anything else for today, and that's fine. Joe Brady said, hey, I pounded the table for Keon Coleman before the draft. So we all know last week when Brandon Beane started speaking and Terry Bagula interrupted him, literally said, can I interrupt here? And he said that Brandon Beane was not, Keon Coleman was not the guy that Brandon Beane wanted. And that Brandon Beane ended up being a team player. And then John Worrell from the AP, shout out to him, broke news later that same day that, well, he was not talking about Sean McDermott. Well, he was talking about Joe Brady. Maybe Adam Henry, the wide receiver coach, too, I don't know. But he was definitely talking about Joe Brady because Joe Brady owned that. Joe Brady said that today. Joe Brady said he pounded the table for him. He said later on today, Thursday, the best thing that could have ever happened to Keon Coleman is that Joe Brady is his head coach now. He said that he will be a Buffalo Bill this year. Now, I'm going to be honest. My opinion, I hope that's bullshit. I hope that's coach speak. I hope that's saying what you got to say right now. I hope that's not devaluing the potential of maybe making a trade in the spring and getting something even more. Because if Joe Brady says, yeah, well, the owner's kind of right. We'll see what happens with Keon. He's going to get an opportunity. Maybe he'll make this team. Hopefully he can bounce back. Maybe he'll get in the gym. He'll work hard. He'll do all the right things. And he'll go out there and he'll press and he'll make this team. And maybe he can earn his way back into a role with this football team. You say that, you're just devaluing him even more. You got to say the right things. You got to hype him up. If nothing else, 31 other teams, you got to make them think, man, you're not gonna pillage us. You're not gonna poach us for Keon Coleman. I'm not giving you Keon Coleman for a 6th round for a 7th round swap. You're gonna have to come bigger than that. You want Keon Coleman. This guy's still a good player. So I get why he's talking him up right now. I got no issue with that. It'd be stupid for him not to. But it worries me. It worries me Does Joe Brady have the ego to think that he's going to try to force another year of Keon Coleman being the answer? Because if you do that and he's out there for 60% of the snaps, 65% of the snaps for a full season, for a half season, whatever, and you see the Keon Coleman that we've seen this year for the most part, well, how's your offense going to improve, right? The way I look at it is this. Khalil Shakir is definitely one of your three receivers. Like it or not, Josh Palmer will go into the summer. They gave him a big contract. They're not going to move on from him after just 1 year. A lot of dead cap space. Doesn't make financial sense. Shakir, Palmer, there's two of your top three. That third cannot be Keon Coleman. You cannot be serious about trying to elevate your passing game and having a top three that consists of Shakir, Palmer, and Keon Coleman. Maybe Brandon Cooks is back. If he is, I sincerely hope that he's like Elijah Moore or Curtis Samuel on this team. I hope he has that role. I hope when you're trying to win playoff games, you're not having to rely on Brandon Cooks to be the one to make the big play. That just can't happen. I have no issue with him being back long as it's in a much more of a supporting role as opposed to trying to be the leading man of the wide receiving corps, especially down the field. That shit just can't happen again. I said Curtis Samuel. I absolutely think he's going to get cut. He's done. He will not be a Buffalo Bill this year. Tyrell Shavers tore his ACL, unfortunately, in January. No way he's going to be good to go to start the season. So you got Shakir, you got Palmer. You for sure need two guys. You need two new guys, for sure. And one of them's got to be a prime piece. We don't need to get into all that shit today. You know, we're talking whether it's Waddle, Thomas, Mike Evans, by the way, those are trade candidates. Mike Evans could be a free agent. There's lots of names, lots of potential. We'll talk about that over the next couple weeks. But you get my point. Got to get a quality veteran, and I mean quality veteran, not the next Curtis Samuel or Josh Palmer, not a guy who you seem promised because he's done some good things, but he hasn't really hit his potential yet. The Bills need a guy who already has that potential. You've already seen that potential. The Bills got to have that. Get a veteran, get a draft pick very high in this draft. Where does that leave Keon Coleman? That's my point. That's my point. And the last thing I'll say about it is this too. Joe Brady thinks he said this. Joe Brady can get more out of Keon Coleman now that he's the head coach. I question that. Like, why couldn't you get more of Keon Coleman as the offensive coordinator this entire season? You got a lot out of him in training camp because he looked a part of training camp. I remember going back to practice or leaving practice. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. If Keon Coleman don't get 1,000 yards this year, I'm going to be shocked because he was owning DBs in training camp. Now, of course, you know, guys like Dane Jackson and Dorian Strong, which, by the way, Dorian Strong, news item, Matt Perino reported, he said that Brandon Beane said he's got to have a risky procedure done. His career might be over. I hope it's not. But anyway, my point, not to get off track here. Keon looked apart. Regular season comes, he looks great for 1 week, and then bam, falls off a cliff. Joe Brady deserves responsibility for that. Why didn't you get more out of him as the offensive coordinator throughout the season? Now you're just going to flip a switch because you become head coach? Again, that scares me because are you overconfident, almost egotistical enough that you are going to continue instead of going out and, you know, Brandon Beane getting on the same page and saying, man, we got to get some goddamn help. Hey, Brandon, this ain't the dude, man. This ain't the one. Go get me a legit big X receiver because it's not this guy. I sure hope he has the balls to do that and that Brandon listens because another season of Shakir, Palmer, and Keon Coleman is your top three with another Brandon Cooks type and a day 2 draft pick. That's just not going to get it done, man. It's not. All right, one more quick 5-second break on the video side. Come back. I'm going to give you my biggest press conference takeaways. And again, one other item that I just think is so big that we don't know yet. back, literally right back. All right, we are back here one more time, and looking at the live chat here, trying to sneak a peek in. Ralph Wilson Sr. Tuck scored again? Is that what I'm seeing here? What's going on here? I'm in real time. I got to be careful. All right, anyway, sure looks like the Sabres are about to win another game. They did. 4-1, and Alex Tuck has a hat trick. Just talked about him, which, by the way, if you are a hockey guy, go back and listen to yesterday's show. I was live from Sunny Reds. I had Joe Gurdon on with me. We spent almost a full hour talking about hockey, and Alex Tuck, what the Sabres do with him, was a big topic of that conversation. Make sure you go check it out because I said he just got a hat trick. So price of poker is going up for him more and more. All right, let's get back to Joe Brady here. My biggest post-press conference takeaways. There it is. And I'm being honest. Call me a homer, which almost no one ever does. I really get accused of being a homer, whether it's among my friends, whether it's on social media, or especially on this show. I get criticized more for being sometimes irrationally critical of Buffalo sports teams and being a homer. But I'm going to say this. I was, by large, as a whole, very, very impressed today with Joe Brady. I said it earlier. I thought he was raw. I thought he was real. He talked about, he owned some of his own personal issues. He knows sometimes he talks too fast. He said he stutters over words sometimes, but that's who he is. And he's good with that. I like that. I like that about him, man. I see Joe Brady as a guy, like I said earlier, no one's going to outwork him. He's not going to say that. He doesn't need to. You just get that sense. Like, he wanted that job like we need oxygen. Like, he needed to be the Bills head coach more than me or any of you listening to this show. Like, we need fucking oxygen. That's how bad Joe Brady wanted this job. He is going to be driven. And today gave me a much bigger sense of that. But I also don't think he's going to be the pushover that some think he's going to be either. Now, again, I just talked about him and Josh Allen. He knows who butters his bread. He's going to collaborate with Josh Allen. That's going to be more of a partnership, I feel like, than anything else. But guys 2 through 53 on this roster, that dude's got some fire, man. He's wired. We saw that. Like some Tasmanian devil level shit from Joe Brady. I think he's going to be really intense, but intense in a way that it gets through to players, which is another thing about Sean McDermott, kind of specific in this case, but just in general. When you're a head coach for long enough, when you're a coach of a team, probably not just football, any sport, long enough, I feel like your message might get a little stale. Like, how many times can you get in someone's face and rah-rah them and get them fired up? How many ways can you get somebody to motivate and give that extra 1 or 2% that's going to decide a game? You know, it's hard as time goes on. It's hard to be able to continue to deliver that message without it getting stale. That's not exclusive to Sean McDermott. That's 99% of coaches in sports and in life. Well, his message is going to be fresh. It's going to resonate with this team. He's going to be, I'll tell you what, normally training camp is a little kind of like whatever. It doesn't really amount to much. It feels in the moment like it's a lot. If you know, again, most of the time it doesn't amount to shit. Keon Coleman was the MVP of training camp. Who cares, right? Some guys look really good in camp. Regular season comes, nothing. Vice versa. They just turn on a switch. But camp is fun in a way because you see personalities a lot. And I think Rochester is going to be fun this summer because I think you're going to see a very, very, you're going to see a personable Joe Brady. You're going to see fire. There's going to be some great clips from him. There's going to be some great sound bites. There's going to be some great animation when a great energy from him. You're going to see that going all the way soon as St. John's Fisher starts, where somebody makes a play, he's going to be running down that sideline. He's going to be a fucking lunatic, basically, is what I'm telling you. And I'm here for it. I like that. I like that a lot. I do. I really do. He's going to, and this is the last thing, too. This is actually really important. And I'll say this, and I'll admit this. I've called for Joe Brady's head. So, again, the whole ball washing thing, you could go find receipts on my social media, my Twitter, for days. I'll say it. I've called for Joe Brady's head probably 100 times. Whether it's this show, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's talking to my wife, my son, my friends, strangers, it don't matter. I've said, yo, this fucking dude needs to be fired. I said it as recently as near the end of the regular season. All right? If Joe Brady would have gotten fired when Sean McDermott did, I would have been like, well, I get it. I understand. It's the culmination of things. So I'm going to preface that by saying I've called for this dude's head. Like most of you. Pretty much like all of you. I don't know many people that have said, man, I'm a Joe Brady guy through and through. Yeah, he's done a couple little things here and there that I don't love. But all in all, he's been awesome as the offensive coordinator. I know very few people that have had that mindset. But all that said, how do I say this the right way? I want to go back to after the Bills lost to the Bengals in 2022. And I did a live show at Imperial Pizza, and Tyler Dunn was my guest. And we were evaluating kind of the season. And I was talking about, this player looked good. It was a really good year for Greg Rizzo. It was a really good year for Ed Oliver. Stephon Diggs, man, what an awesome year for him. And Tyler kind of stopped me. And by the way, this is a year before the infamous, controversial Sean McDermott series that Tyler wrote, where people started thinking that, he just had an axe to grind against Sean and he hates the Bills, and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, I'm talking about these guys up. I say, it's a good season. Fell short a little bit in the playoffs. He's like, well, see, that's the point, Pat. That's the point. You got to grade this team on a curve. What is your expectation for this team? You got to move the goalposts. They should be moved. Is your expectation for this team to be good in the regular season? Is your goal to win the division title? Is your goal to have a 4 or 5 year playoff streak? Or is your goal to get to the Super Bowl? Players should be graded on a curve. You should care about how they play in the playoffs a lot more than how they play in the regular season. You play the regular season to get to the playoffs. And ultimately, you get judged on what you do in the playoffs. And I remember that so well because that Cincinnati game, and I'm not just trying to single him out because he's redeemed himself in the playoffs since then, but Ed Oliver sucked. Ed Oliver completely and utterly disappeared, as in most of the defense, but I'm just using him as an example, in that Bengals game. Awful. And it's like, I didn't realize that. I'm like, you know what? How can you call Ed Oliver's season a good one when he completely shit the bed that year in the playoffs? So ever since then, I've kind of been that way. It's like, well, they had a great year, but what do they do in the playoffs? I say that for this reason. Going back to Joe Brady. Joe Brady had a very kind of mixed bag in the regular season. There were some weeks where I thought he was brilliant. Like the Pittsburgh game. You don't have Spencer Brown. You don't have Deion Dawkins. What do? Alec Anderson, Ryan Vandermark, they get physical as fuck. They just ground and pound the football. 6 offensive line, they're going to pound you. The Tampa Bay game, I thought he was great. The Bengals game, I thought it was great. Then there were other games where I'm like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like that Houston game. The Houston game pissed me off. I think if I would have had a rock, I would have thrown it at Joe Brady. I was so pissed off after the Houston game. I'm like, what the fuck? You cannot block this front four. They're not even blitzing. They're just killing the offensive line. How do you not have a tight end and a running back and extra people back to block every play? Max protection city it should have been against Houston. But no, Joe Brady kept insisting on spreading it out and having 5-man blocking systems, and Houston ate their freaking lunch that night. That's on Joe Brady. That's a Joe Brady thing. So again, a mixed bag. All to get long-winded here, what I'm trying to tell you. I thought Joe Brady in the playoffs, where it means more, I thought Joe Brady was absolutely in his bag these playoffs. Huge. Big time. He schemed open a lot of shit. Both games. Both games. Jacksonville and Denver. Jacksonville and Denver. Both of them. That Jacksonville game, a handful of calls. Again, execution, sometimes a problem, sometimes it wasn't. But that fake bubble screen where they leaked out Kincaid, that was being set up the whole game for that play. And it worked. And it worked. The Denver game. Let's just put it this way. Maybe in the past couple playoffs has been at least a little bit too conservative. Not for me this year. The Bills not playing in Foxborough, and quite possibly, we're not talking about a Bills versus Seattle Super Bowl, literally right now this week. It's 100% on the players. 100%. 100% on the players on the offense not executing against Denver on offense. That's it. The end. Josh Allen's mistakes, the turnovers, the missed throw to Dawson Knox, the missed throw to Khalil Shakir, James Cook fumbling when they're about to go up 14-3. Of course, Brandon Cooks not controlling the catch, not being strong enough to hold on to that football and have it wrestled away as he's hitting the ground. Hardman not making what would have been a tough play, but making a play in overtime. Those calls were dialed up brilliantly. They were dialed up perfect. Dawson Knox is wide open to win the game. Khalil Shakir, the dirt ball. That screen's going for it. You could kill screens in the end of the earth. That would have been the best screen of your life because that was going to be a touchdown, a go-ahead touchdown. Dawson Knox play was going to win the game. Mecole Hardman play, that was going to be first down inside the 40 in overtime. And, of course, the Brandon Cooks catch becomes a chip shot field goal. Scored 30 points in that game with 5 turnovers. Shit would have been 40. Maybe even more. Even if they had 2 turnovers, instead of 5, they're dropping 40. So I thought Joe Brady was in his bag. And if you don't want to give him credit for that, then I'm like, I just think you're hating on him. You don't like him and you don't want to like him, and you're not going to be objective. You've already made up your mind before the game's even played. And I can't stand when people do that on either side. You're either going to unconditionally find everything to love about the guy, or you're unconditionally going to find everything you hate about the guy, and you're just not going to look at things with an objective point of view. I don't understand how you could look back at these playoffs and say that Joe Brady didn't do a good job. I don't get it. That's not to say that he should be head coach right now. I'm just saying you have to respect what he did in the playoffs, and based on that and the fact that they want to retool the defense, but they don't want to have to redo the entire team, it just starts to make more sense. Now, for me, I'm sticking with what I said throughout this entire process. Soon as they started the head coaching process, I flipped early on. I said this on the show 2 days ago, too. I predicted it was going to be Joe Brady. I said, this team's just going to fucking fire Sean. They're going to have a de facto coaching search, and they're just ultimately going to end up hiring Joe Brady. That was my initial early predictions. I still got 1 or 2 tweets flowing around, and I admitted this a few days ago. I didn't want to get called out. I deleted a few tweets. Just idiocy on my part. But anyway, I thought early on he was going to be the head coach. And then I was like, I don't know, man. He's interviewing for letting him interview for other places. I'm like, they really wanted him. Why are they going to go let him interview for Baltimore? Maybe Baltimore sells him, and even though the Bills still want him, he goes, oh, fuck that. I'm going to pick Baltimore. They got more talent on the team, a better situation for me. Maybe they're going to pay me more money. The salary cap situation is better. By letting him go to other teams, you at least risked someone else blowing him away to say, you know what? Maybe I want a fresh start. Maybe I don't want the pressure of having to win a Super Bowl or bust with the Buffalo Bills, where everyone's going to say, well, they should have never hired me to begin with. They took a big risk by doing that. So that got me thinking, well, maybe Grant Rudinsky is the guy. Maybe Davis Webb will be the guy. I never thought Brian Dable was going to be the guy. I just think from what I heard, there was just going into that interview, there were people in that interview room who weren't very high on Brian Dable. So I was actually a little surprised that he even got an interview. Anyway, never thought he was going to get it, but I definitely thought Rudinsky could get it. Or one or two other guys. Maybe Phillip Rivers before he pulled out. So none of that matters. That's my point. Whoever the head coach is, and now it's Joe Brady, I care just as much, maybe even more, about what this defense is going to look like than I care about who gets this head coaching job. Because between this offensive line, between James Cook, and especially, and Khalil Shakir too, but especially obviously Josh Allen, whoever took over this team, especially if it was an offensive mind, I think the offense was going to be fine. It's always been, for me, about the defense. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Who's going to be the DL coach? What's going to be their scheme? What's going to be the guys that they want to bring in? I've cared about that for the last 2 weeks now more than even the head coach. Again, yes, his offense could have done more in the playoffs. They scored 30, but it should have been more in Denver. So you could say that's the offensive fault, and it was. And yes, Josh Allen had the ball last year at Arrowhead with a chance to win the game. He set up the wrong offensive line protection, got blitzed, floated up a ball. Dalton Kincaid couldn't catch it. Should have caught it, didn't catch it. Yes, Josh Allen, the year before that, in the divisional round against Kansas City in Orchard Park. Big play, pivotal moment of the game, gets pressured by Chris Jones, doesn't get enough on the ball, and it falls short to Khalil Shakir in the end zone. Could have won the game. At least got them ahead very late. The play before that, and then Tyler Bass misses a field goal. I get all that. And there's also some absolutely stupid idiots out there that continue to say that Josh Allen is the reason. Josh Allen is the failure. Josh Allen's never won in overtime. Just fucking stupidity coming from people who just seek attention and nothing more. Let's just be really straight about that. That's neither here nor there, though. My point is this. Yes, the offense could be doing more. They should. But time and time and time again, it's been the defense. It's been the defense. At the end of the day, this defense since 2020, while mostly good in the regular season and like in a wild card game or whatever, they fall apart in these elimination games. And they give up 33.8 points literally in these elimination games now. They're the reason. The defense is the primary reason why the Buffalo Bills have not been to at least one, if not multiple, Super Bowls. A couple times where the defense needed to be aggressive and they played soft. See 3rd and 11 in Denver just a couple weeks ago. Getting a few players to step up instead of disappearing. See Joey Bosa this year. See Greg Rizzo at Arrowhead last year. See Ed Oliver the year before that. Those kind of guys. Maybe get a teeny-weeny little bit better injury luck too, because that's been a role. All that, those few little things on the defense, and the Bills are in at least one, if not multiple, Super Bowls. So to me, more than anything else, it is completely about just simply getting the right defensive coordinator, getting the right coaches, and figuring out what the right personnel is who's going to make a big play at a critical time. Because when the Bills lose in the playoffs, none of those guys exist. So that's my thing. And by the way, if you're watching this on the video side, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually see the comments a little bit better. I'm going to get to a few of these, and then I'm going to bounce. Football fan 5486 says it's also the offense. Well, it is. I just said that. It is also the offense. The offense plays a role in it. 5 turnovers. The Bills win the game by 3 scores if they don't turn the ball over 5 times. So nobody's trying to deny that. Trying to go over here. Paul Walker says, Yep, that 3rd and 11 soft zone is etched in my mind. I knew after that it was Bullocks. Yeah, we've talked about that some on the show too, man. It was the wrong time for that call. They show blitz. Tyler was on the show last week. I mean, he dialed up that play to perfection. 7 guys on the line. Bo Nick's there. You get a stop. It's 4th and 11. 2-something left. They got all their timeouts. They probably punting because they were inside their own 40. They're probably punting, try to get a 3 and out to get the ball back. But we'll never know. Bad call there. Tooch is in the house on the video side. Dable would have been living in that tent with Josh, and we would have made it past Jacksonville. All right, that's funny. Paul says, I swear Dable is Joe Marino's daddy. Is that a compliment? Are you throwing some strays at my guy, Joe Marino, Locked On Bills? Don't do that. First time Rivers pulled out from Ralph Wilson Sr. Let me ask you this, guys. And if you can't answer now live, leave a comment for the video after or tweet at me. I said earlier in the show that I thought if Phillip Rivers didn't pull out, I thought there was a legit, real shot that Phillip Rivers would have got this job. Do you agree with that? Matt says, if we absolutely have to swap 1st and a 3rd this year and give up our 1st next year, if that's what it takes, I really believe getting Tate on the cheap is the best way to go give up the capital. All right, talk about a high draft pick and getting way up in the draft. I don't see that kind of move from Brandon Beane. And look, it's January, and what the fuck do I know? But what I will say is I think Brandon Beane, with the salary cap situation right now, is going to put a priority on draft picks. What did he pick, 26? I wouldn't be surprised if they traded down and picked up more picks. I think if they're going to be aggressive and if they're going to get a receiver, it's going to be a veteran. And don't get me wrong, they're going to draft one too. 1st round, 2nd round for sure. But I think the big move, the big play is going to be you got to go get a veteran receiver. I mean, it's not going to be Justin Jefferson or anything crazy like that, but there's guys out there, I'm sure. Like I said, Mike Evans, for whatever reason right now, just pops in my mind. Ralph Wilson said, Pat hasn't taken a breath yet. You're not lying. You know, dude, someone just mentioned Joe Marino earlier. I don't know how the freak these solo podcasters do this day after day after day. It's tough. It's tough, especially when you're trying to monitor a chat and you're live, trying to, make sure you're not losing focus for the people watching, but you're also locked in on the audio part of it as well. I'm not used. I always prefer to have a guest. Paul said, happy as a clam, the Sabres are crushing it. What is that, like 23-1 now in their last 24? I talked with Yurden on the show yesterday. If you live in Buffalo, and even if you're a casual Sabres fan, if you could score a ticket, that arena on Saturday night, Montreal's coming to town, that shit is going to be popping. I can't wait. Like, I'm going to watch the World Rumble on Saturday. I'm going to drink a lot of fucking beer, and then I'm going to be watching Sabres Canadian. Like, I ain't leaving the house on Saturday. I'm just going to pound beers, watch the Rumble with some friends, and then keep the party going. Sabres, Montreal. Richard said, our success will depend on who the DC is. I completely agree. I kind of had my spiel there near the end of the show. I think there's 3 coordinators right now that are in the mix that, well, I don't know if they're in the mix. I know one is. 3 coordinators that fans really, really want right now. Jim Schwartz, Jim Leonard, and Raheem Morris. Jim Leonard is the name, the catchy name. I should have said that. By the way, I forgot about that. Shame on me. God damn it, Patrick. One of the things that I forgot to write down that was part of my takeaways from Brady's presser, he was talking about defense, mixing it up, giving you looks, almost kind of saying I'd like to have some kind of hybrid matchup type defense. Well, Jim Leonard, who I could tell you this, I don't like to use the word source often. I'm not no insider, but trust me when I tell you this, folks. The Bills are in on Jim Leonard. Do they get him? I don't know. Do they have other candidates? Maybe he's 2 on their list, but I'm telling you this, the Bills are in on Jim Leonard. I know that for sure. I fully believe that. Does he come here? I don't know. Sounds like a great fit. But anyway, those three guys, for what it's worth, Matt Bove put out a poll on Twitter on Thursday morning about which one would fans prefer. It was neck and neck between Schwartz and Leonard. Morris was way behind. I'd be really happy with Raheem Morris. I mean, he's got a really strong defensive coordinator background. He won a Super Bowl as a coordinator. So we'll see what happens. It could be, of course, none of them. Jim Schwartz would be awesome. I've heard no connection. Kind of seems like if he doesn't end up staying in Cleveland, which don't look like he's going to, Frisco kind of feels like the possibility there. Tooch said, did Pat just call Shakir a dirtball? Did I call Shakir a dirtball? I said, no, I got thrown a dirtball. Trying to go through a few more of these. I'm being careful because, again, I don't want the long spaces on the audio side. And on the video side, I don't like not looking at the camera, but I have to. Diamond Pickle said, Bernard ain't worth shit. I reported this on the podcast, a rare report from me. I think it was at the beginning of the week. I heard that he got hurt on the third day of training camp, and from that point on, he never had a single practice, preseason moment, or regular season game where he was 100% healthy. He's injury prone. That's scary, and I don't know if that's going to change. I'm just saying, in fairness to him, and not to make excuses, he was not healthy at all this year. Just not healthy at all. Let me see. That might be it for these. Again, I'm kind of going a little bit long here. Some of these were at the beginning too. Anyway, all right, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna leave this here. Comments were awesome. Live chat awesome. Again, especially on a night where the Sabres were playing and whooping ass 4-1 over the LA Kings. God, it freaking feels good to have a Sabres team that is good. It's fun. If they end the drought and they get back to Buffalo, man, if you're in Buffalo and you get downtown, it feels like a fucking eternity ago. The parties in the plaza for Sabres playoff games. Just the thought of them being back and maybe some Google Dolls music and shit like that. It is just going to be wild, man. It's going to be wild. Fred says, let's go Buffalo. Sabres are on a bandwagon. Yes, they are. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this show. Thank you so much. And bonus episode, should have said this at the beginning. I forgot. So, the other day, Matt Warren on Tuesday morning, Matt Warren and I recorded our weekly episode, positional analysis, grades for the year, on the premise that the Bills wouldn't hire a head coach. An hour after we got done, the Bills hired a head coach. So I had to shelf that episode, but just take it out the beginning, and then we're going to keep the substance in it. So there actually will be a bonus episode of Talking Buffalo tomorrow. Make sure with Matt Warren, SB Nation, make sure you look for that. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, for listening. I've totally lost my voice. Appreciate you guys so much. Talk to you soon.